I'm October Ember Moonbizer, and you're going to be watching Science Behind the Scares.
What are you doing?
I'm recording your intro.
Ah. Recently, I got a chance to sit down with Scott Scherpenberg of the Cheviot Fire Department. And today's topic, actor safety. Let's take a look at that video now.
Scott Scherpenberg, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I've been at the Cheviot Fire Department for over 20 years. I've been in the medical profession that entire time. Been kind of a local person here in Cheviot and whatnot. I've always been here.
Yeah.
This is where I've always been. Always loved the haunted house. And, and we understand, too, being at the fire service, that sometimes when you're in this gear, when you're wearing all this excessive layers of clothing and whatnot, it can get extremely hot, and before you know it, you can be up against, a situation that potentially could be a medical emergency.
Yeah. We're going to talk about some of the signs and symptoms of what you might experience, how to prevent those, and maybe reversing them if you catch them early enough. So what is dehydration? Well,
dehydration, your body is basically always creating balance. And it's if you think about your body as a tank or as a system, you want to keep the system full, and you want to keep it full of water. Your plants, you water them,
Mm-hmm.
Your body's no different. So the fuller the tank, the better your body will operate. So you want staying hydrated basically allows the cells to do what they're supposed to do and function how they're supposed to function, delivering the right parts of nutrients to the body and whatnot.
Okay.
So when you sweat or when you take less fluids in, then now you are reducing that tank, which now affects how them cells operate and functions. Now, when I say cells, you might be thinking cells in your skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, but them cells, but your liver function, your heart, just everything, your blood
Brain
pressure,
cells.
your brain, so there's so many different functions that the cells, provide the body, and when you're dehydrated, it can take the wheel off the track. And so staying hydrated is extremely important with that. And basically, dehydration, it is such an easy fix, but it's the first indicator to potentially something that could be worse, which would be like hyperthermia.
Yeah. What are some of those early indicators?
Well, it's some people, it's common sense. With it, when you're thirsty, you drink water.
Yeah.
So if you run, you're going to get thirsty because your body just got done using up some of those fluids in it to keep yourself cool. So now you got to replenish them. So that causes you to get thirsty.
So a thirst, dry mouth.
Yeah, you could get a headache. With it, and you could even feel faint and get dizzy. Just for instance, if your blood pressure bottoms out a little bit, what your body will do, the brain is an incredible thing. It will actually, your body will, if it senses that your blood pressure is getting too low and you're moving around, it'll just knock you out and you'll pass out. And so when you're laying flat like that, it'll basically kind of like hit the reset button.
Yeah, kind of a chance for you to relax and get your blood pressure a little bit back towards the normal.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and just getting the flow, gravity affects your.
Yeah.
So if you're standing up all day, that affects you.
It's like when you stand up suddenly.
Yes, you might get dizzy.
And you might get dizzy.
Yeah. And so when you're in these conditions that are constantly changing, and you got in the brain, you got the hypothalamus, and that regulates your body temperature.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're dehydrated, outside of the fact that you might not be as perky as you normally would, outside that you might not be as mentally with it and able to work as hard and as fast as you normally because you're dehydrated. Well, your hypothalamus also may not work properly.
Okay.
Your hypothalamus regulates your body temperature, right? So if that takes a step back, now all of a sudden you are doing these changing of costumes or changing of a routine, it could very easily, snowball into something more.
Okay. So let's say I start to experience dry mouth, thirst, some of these early warning signs. Can I just chug a whole bunch of water and immediately go back to work and I'm fine?
No, I mean, if you start feeling bad, if you start feeling dizzy, if you start feeling like your heart's beating out of its chest, if you start feeling like, you haven't urinated in a long time, lack of urination is another thing on dehydration.
Okay.
Or when you do urinate, you're starting to see it darken color. Yeah, you definitely need to take a break. You need to get into a cooler environment. You need to get out of the clothes that you're in.
Okay.
And then really, at that time, really to get a good indicator would be to take a full set of vitals, where you're taking the heart, you're taking the pulse, the blood pressure, the respirations.
Okay.
And you're actually kind of monitoring them a little bit. You guys might not have those capabilities necessarily, but one of the things that in an emergent situation, if somebody was about to pass out or they were feeling like they were, or even if they did pass out, if you check somebody's radial pulse, if they have a radial pulse, that means their systolic blood pressure is over 90.
Okay.
If they don't have a radial pulse, that means it's probably less than 90.
Okay.
And that means the blood pressure bottomed out, and that would be an indicator that, hey, you know what, let's get the life squad here.
Okay. All right.
So
And-
if you would pass out right now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to elevate your legs and I'm going to take your pulse.
Okay.
And if you got a pulse, I'm going to think, okay, what's going on with you? And then I'm going to check. I'm going to start checking for seizure activity, things like that, which all this stuff could snowball into if you disregard dehydration and fight through it.
Yeah.
You
okay.
need to stay hydrated. It's very important.
So, finding someone in your haunt that you can take a break, letting them know, hey, I'm starting to show early signs here. I've got symptoms of dehydration. I need to take a break, get some water in me, cool off for a little while, and then hopefully get back to work. So that way it doesn't snowball and get worse.
Yeah. Now, there's a difference between a workout and sweating and fighting through, like being a hard worker and fighting through it, and actually starting to begin a medical emergency.
Yeah.
And so that's where each person needs to know what their body's telling them.
Yeah.
And then react to it.
And sometimes, whether it's because we're having so much fun or we're just dedicated to our haunt, we may, not pay attention to some of those symptoms or signs and try to fight through them where, if you took your break, got your water in you, cooled off, you can reverse that and you don't have to worry about it snowballing and getting a lot worse.
Right. I mean, so, mild dehydration, something very quick to do. You're gonna drink your fluids, because you're gonna be thirsty. You're gonna have a dry mouth. You're gonna not be urinating as much. Your urine will start getting a little darker. You might have a little headache. But if you ignore them, then all those things are gonna do is they're just gonna add to it. So now on top of that, now we're gonna go into the world of a severe dehydration.
Oh, yeah.
So where you are gonna faint, you're gonna feel dizzy, you're gonna feel real sleepy. You might even get confused. And so then, as this thing progresses and you continue to ignore it, now your confusion will increase even more, because now you're in heat exhaustion. Just because you're in heat exhaustion doesn't mean you have to go to the hospital, but it probably should mean that you definitely should take a break, consider seeking medical attention, get somebody there to take your vitals and whatnot once you get to the point. And so how do you know that somebody's came into heat exhaustion? leads to dehydration.
Yeah. That brings us actually into our next topic, which is hyperthermia. Now, is that exactly the same thing as heat exhaustion, heat stroke, sunstroke, or are they different things or kind of variations of the same thing?
Okay, so your dehydration is kind of going to be the first lowest level of your body getting imbalanced. And then as that gets ignored, you're going to go into more of a heat exhaustion.
Okay.
And as you progress, fight through it or whatever, which somebody could completely fight through something like that and nobody would ever know. And they could get to the point of heat stroke. Heat stroke, sunstroke are the same thing. You know, they're kind of two words that they go in with each other.
Yeah.
But once you get to a heat stroke, now you know that is a medical emergency. That
You hit 104 degrees Fahrenheit, your core body temperature, that's considered starting to get into severe
once you
heat
get to
stroke.
104, 105, yes,
Okay.
yes. And with all of them, is the treatment's the same. It's cooling.
Yeah.
It's cooling.
Cooling and hydrating.
Yeah.
Okay.
With somebody in a severe heat stroke moment, you got to be cautious how you hydrate. You just can't just load them with fluids.
Yeah.
You have to.
Slow intake over time, including electrolytes.
Electrolytes is really that's interesting. You say that that's really good to do for the dehydration category and the heat exhaustion because that's going to replace all the electrolytes. So your Gatorades and whatnot. You know, I'm not a big sugar drinker at all, and I'm not but they do have their value with the electrolytes, especially when you're in situations like that where you're working hard.
Yeah, yeah. Electrolytes, I think, is kind of common sense, but the base electrolyte is like salt, and salt helps hold water into the body longer.
Salt
Like
definitely helps with the function of how the body will intake the water and distribute it. Big thing with salt too. The heart beats off of balance.
Okay.
And that part of that balance is sodium and potassium.
Okay.
So
you can always overdo
why
it. Too.
your heart initiates that electrical activity is from sodium and potassium vying for the same spot, and it's almost like a magnet. It won't stick together. It's like the backside of a magnet. And it reverses and it just goes across each other, and that passing is what causes that electric activity. So when you're dehydrated, when you got heat exhaustion, and now it forms into hypothermia, you just jacked up that whole balance, and you very easily can go into a dysrhythmia that could be lethal, could kill you, put you in cardiac arrest. Hopefully, way before then, your body and brain is doing what it's supposed to do, and you know, when you get to severe heat exhaustion or heat stroke, you're going to have behavioral changes. You're going to be unconscious. You know, you might be in a seizure.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your body is going to be screaming something's wrong.
Yeah.
It's very uncommon for somebody to get to that point of no return. You know, without anybody knowing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is where it's very important for all you guys to just check in with each other every once in a while, because it can be very easy, and when you're, you know, in this acting mode and in your little location and whatnot, that you kind of just get lost in there, and you could look like you're functioning with the emotions, but then all of a sudden, just like that guy we had at the restaurant the other day, hey, what's going on? Where you at? He had no idea, and then all of a sudden the domino effect happened, and you realize, okay, he's actually in a medical emergency.
Yeah.
Because of his confusion. He had no idea where he was at. He had no idea what was going on, and he actually was going through a higher end of heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
Is basically and dehydration. It all started with dehydration, but it ended up with heat exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because if you're hydrated, your body has a lot better chance of keeping that balance.
Yeah. Now, some haunts go into all kinds of seasons, and they may be indoors, they may be outdoors, they may have heating, they may not. A lot of them are starting to do a Christmas event now. And we can get to where it's almost freezing temperatures, and you might be outside or you might be in a part of the building that doesn't have heat. So I also wanted to talk about hypothermia.
Okay. And so even no matter what time of the year it is, you can experience both. And that's something to always remember, is that just because it's winter doesn't mean you can't have a hypothermic episode.
Okay.
Just because it's summer doesn't mean you can,
still
have a hypothermia.
If you're fully clothed and you're running and jumping around like a clown would be, full of energy, you can still overheat.
Yes. Yeah. I had a girl one time that I responded to, unconscious, unresponsive, non-breather, in the park, and it was middle of summer, and we ended up saving her, but I didn't think she was going to make it. But she ended up being in Drake for like 9 months because she had hypothermia in the summertime because she got drunk and passed out at the park. And she was drunk, she was dehydrated, and her hypothalamus wasn't working properly. So no matter what, that temperature was 70-something degrees that night.
Yeah.
But her body's 98.6.
Yeah.
And because her body wasn't regulating at 98.6, it dropped down, didn't get close to 7, it was like 84, 83, which is really scary.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, so like and nobody would have ever thought that she could have had a hypothermic episode in the middle of summer.
I'm not 100% sure on this one. Maybe you can answer, maybe not. Is it around 90? When you get past 94, you're getting into severe hypothermia?
Mild. Yeah, or it can start bleeding into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's good thing she made it.
Yeah. So with that, don't ever get caught up in the seasons. Just know the signs and symptoms, and right out the gate, stay hydrated. You're supposed to drink. If you weigh 200 pounds in a day's time of normal activity, you're supposed to drink 100 ounces of water.
100 ounces.
Half your body weight.
Okay.
In ounces. So basically, it's not half your body weight, but half your. So whatever your number, if you're 200 pounds, you should drink 100 ounces of water.
Okay.
If you're 150 pounds, you drink 75 ounces of water. Now that's for normal day-to-day function. And then if you drink a cup of coffee, that doesn't count. Caffeine doesn't count. So if you drink a pop,
we love our caffeine when we're hunting.
Right. We
need the energy.
Well, so it needs to, and so caffeine can exacerbate all these things and make them more intense.
Mm-hmm. So especially a heartbeat. It can make your heart beat a lot faster than it normally would.
And the sugar and just everything, and the caffeine, it's not even necessarily the caffeine. The caffeine is not what will affect you negatively with your hydration. It's all the sugars and the other stuff that's in there.
Yeah.
If you drink a pop, you should drink a water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bounce it out.
Yeah, well, but you should really just be drinking water.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. You want to get that energy out.
Yeah, you want to get that energy.
If you want natural ways, I'm sure you can Google them, but push-ups and pull-ups.
And if you're somebody like me that doesn't like drinking just plain out of the tap water, there's a lot of things you can do. You can slice up an orange, throw some orange in there, throw some cucumber in there.
Orange, cucumber. The Myo Energies, I'm not promoting that by any means and saying that's it. Naturally, we talked about your Gatorades being good just because of the electrolyte replenishment. But that's the big thing is though staying away from caffeinated drinks, staying away from coffee.
Yeah.
If you're going to do any kind of physical activity, I don't think Tom Brady before a football game and he goes running around, he's drinking a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
They're staying hydrated. They're on their nutrition pretty good.
Yeah. Now, in a wintertime environment, it is nice to have that warm cup of coffee.
Absolutely.
But if you can drink it without sugar, it's going to be a lot more hydrating.
But if your nutrition was good the whole day, then
Yeah.
It's fine. I'm not saying you can't drink all you're setting yourself up for failure. I'm just saying overall your nutrition just has to be conscious. And
this isn't something we just start doing when we're like, oh, we're about to do a large physical activity. We need to start hydrating. This is something we need to focus on all day long, because the body takes a long time to process water. It's not instant, right?
Mm-hmm. And then with that too, when somebody comes up to just because you drink water doesn't mean you're hydrated.
Mm-hmm.
It has to get to the cellular level. Drinking water is drinking water. Hydration is actually getting to the cellular level and improving its function.
Okay.
So until that happens, until somebody's not sweating, until they're not as confused, until they will feel the cooling effects, and that's the thing too. There needs to just to be a standard plan and location that everyone has. That if all of a sudden I'm there working and I go down, or I'm standing in line and I go down, what's our standard approach? Are we going to get him in this room? What are we going to do? Are we going to take employees to a back room somewhere that's cooler, have an AC there? We're going to remove some of his clothing. Doesn't mean strip him naked or whatever, but just take off some
Let
of the
some of
costume
that
and
sweat
cooling.
evaporate.
Right, because that's part of the cooling process is the sweat. And then getting him some fluids, drinking some water, seeing how he feels. And then that's when you say, hey, do you know where you're at? Do you know the date? Do you know the time? Do you know the president is? Do you know what year it is? Who's this guy over here? Asking some questions like that just to see how they're processing everything. And if they can't get the questions that they should get right, that that they know.
Or if they're taking a little bit time that they have to think about it.
Then it's time to call 911.
Yeah.
Or if you look at them and their pupils are unequal, if you're
one's a little bigger, one's a little smaller.
So and every time, and that you're scanning people all the time, and you're looking at their pupils, you're looking at to see their skin color, their condition, are they breathing? How are they breathing? Are they breathing rapid? Are they breathing slow?
Yeah.
Is it shallow?
Sometimes that can be a little difficult because we'll have, we may be wearing contacts that are completely black or completely white or red or whatever, and then we've got makeup on our arms, on our face, hard to see skin color.
Right.
So it's even more important to pay attention to some of the other symptoms.
Yes.
Or signs.
Right.
Sorry.
Yeah. And so, that's just one of the things that if you guys have a good plan in place on if this happens, this is what we expect everyone to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then, and it ends with calling 911. So,
hopefully.
As far as hypothermia, the same situation. Could be a worker, but to me, that's the situation that maybe somebody that's working outside, working the line, who maybe that isn't going through the line, they're just standing there letting people in. Keeping those positions rotated, not letting, making sure they're warm, checking on them regularly. But that'll start with just being cold and shivering. And so they may fight through it. And, that's when it can progress to, a severe emergency where you go, instead of being frostbite or frost nip, you could go into full-blown, frostbite.
Losing feet and hands.
Right. And so with that, it's a different approach when you get somebody that's that cold. But you definitely want to remove them from the environment. Remove any wet clothing off them. If they're wet, if they're sweaty, remove their shirt. Put them in a dry shirt. And definitely cover them with a blanket and whatever. And then you do more of a passive warming approach. If you're freezing right now, and I know your arm was exposed, your hands are red, and you'll see a blotchiness and a red. You don't want to rub because them cells are crystallized and they're basically frozen at that point of frostbite. So what you'll do then is you'll damage all them cells, and it's kind of like a burn. Like a bad burn victim.
You hear about a dry ice burn.
Okay, yeah. And they'll lose feeling and sensation there.
Mm.
It's a very similar thing there. They'll, the body will start shutting down. They'll go to a weak pulse. They could go into cardiac arrest also.
Okay.
Blood pressure.
And we don't always have control over our clothing, but for wintertime situations or cold situations, would it be best to, you said remove wet clothing, so I guess you don't want something that's going to hold moisture like cotton next to your skin. Maybe something like something that would wick away moisture?
If we came up to somebody and they were wet due to a drink being spilled, due to being in water or out in the rain or
sweat,
like that, or yeah, a lot of times it won't be sweat with that. They'll be pretty dry. But yes, we'll get their clothing off of them and then we'll dry them. But then just anything warmer, anything dry and warm. It doesn't. Cotton's not bad.
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily overthink what type of clothing. Just dry clothing would be the key. And then just warming them up. And you start warming them whenever you warm somebody like that. You warm them at the core, and it's the same with cooling. So like when I said had your plan in place, hyperthermia situation, we get them up in a room, AC's going, fans on them, we get their hat off or their helmet or their face, and then we get their jacket and their gloves and all this other stuff off them, and then we keep that fan on, get them some water and whatnot. And if that's not working, if it's a severe case where this guy's going, you can just tell he's circling like he's going down.
Yeah.
That's when you get him in a position where you can lay him down flat, call 911, and then put ice packs or something like that on his core, like in his armpits or chest or behind his neck.
Okay.
A cool wet rag behind the neck. Just something, anything and everything you can do to start getting the body to thinking, okay, it's cooling, because if somebody gets that 105-degree temperature, your goal is to get them to 101, 102.
Yeah.
That's what your goal. You just want to look, but you don't want to, throw them in an ice bath necessarily. You put water on them, you can spray them with a little water or whatever, but
It should be a slow, gradual thing, like it should be.
Right.
Prevention. It should be.
You don't want it to be a
gradual
polar
thing
plunge
all day.
You don't want the polar plunge.
Yeah.
And so with hypothermia, it's the same thing, except for the opposite. Cut the wet clothing off them, put dry clothing on them. Now you're going to warm them passively. You might put heat packs around their cores, and then you just don't rub their skin.
Yeah.
And then fluids. If they can't take fluids, if they're not that thirsty, but they're dehydrated, that's when you call 911, and then we'll come. We'll start an IV and take them out.
Okay. Doing some basic movements like jumping jacks. Since you can't rub the skin, would that be a good way to get blood flowing?
Yeah, but they're not going to have the energy. I mean, if they're in a situation like that, they're barely going to be moving how you want them to move.
Okay.
You're going to have trouble getting them to the room and to the chair.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
going to take a group effort. And so with that, the goal for I guess your video for wanting to do this today is not if there's awareness on this.
Yeah.
And it's something so like, oh, it's easy, but if people ignore it, then it could become a medical emergency.
Yeah.
Once a medical emergency, now it's going to disrupt the whole operation.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you take these small steps right out the gate to ensure everybody's safety,